very good evening to the participants who have logged in for this webinar. I welcome all of you all. I am Ranjiv Babu, and I'm going to be the speaker for the webinar this evening. And we've got 3 participants logged in. Thank you very much for logging in. And I guess we are all in India, so a very good evening to all of you all. And we're going to have this webinar for an hour. So let me just commence with the webinar. And as you all know, I'm going to share my slides, gentlemen. And we are going to talk about combat decision making and business agility today. And we're going to focus more on how to decipher the OODA loop. Now, the OODA loop is an interesting model that was enunciated by air veteran of the US Air Force, and it's adopted by the militaries the world over. And before I move on, let me just say, talk about the primary objective of Leadership Tribe. We are a bunch of guys who are into supporting various leadership roles with tools, techniques, important people skills that drive value. And we are also working with various organizations, leaders, coaches, focus groups to share the wisdom of the tribe, create a sticky learning environment to individuals, teams, and organizations, building high performance organizations, and giving back to the community. So that's something about Leadership Tribe, the company to which I belong, ladies and gentlemen. And also to highlight the Zoom manifesto, we are all here to learn together. Okay. Uh, Use the chat window to reply. I've activated the panelist and the attendees section. The PPT that I'm going to display in the webinar today and the recording of the webinar will be given to you post the webinar. I have a dedicated amount of time for Q&A sessions, but of course that will depend on the interest that gets generated in the webinar. And I will be speaking for about 40 to 45 minutes, and I leave about 15 minutes for us to have open-ended discussions, ladies and gentlemen, on anything to do with the subject or agile or anything related to do with team performance, decision making, and such like topics. Okay, so let's talk about the OODA loop. The OODA loop is more specifically to do with why speed and velocity wins over quality, and what is this OODA loop all about. So the aim and the scope of the webinar today, ladies and gentlemen, is to introduce you to this concept, and let's see as to how you're able to relate it in an agile environment. And having said that, this is about me. I'm Colonel Ranjiv Babu, Vishish Seva Medal. I'm co-founder of Leadership Tribe. I have spent about 25 years in the Indian Army, ladies and gentlemen, as a combat helicopter pilot and commanded a Rashtriya Rifle Battalion. After serving 25 years, I found myself in various combat situations, and I also was in the College of Defense Management in the Faculty of Behavioral Sciences. I used to teach organizational behavior, and that is where my passion for learning commenced and unlearning also commenced. And that is how I was able to chance upon my co-founder of Leadership Tribe, that is Krishna Chodipilli. Both of us founded Leadership Tribe about 5 years ago. And in that journey, ladies and gentlemen, I have moved on, immersed myself in learning, practically worked with agile teams, been with transformations in the adoption and adaptation of agile as a mindset, and also picked up my authorized instructor credentials under IC Agile. And presently, I am authorized to instruct on 6 topics, courses for IC Agile remotely, and those badges are on the slide. So that's about me, ladies and gentlemen. That's about me. Just to give you a brief insight, because I'm going to talk about OODA both from my learnings in the Defense Services Staff College and the College of Defense Management, and the fact that this is what we applied in combat situations, and how I was able to interpolate and relate it in an agile environment, because I see a lot of commonality between both these realms of what I say is human interaction. Because primarily what we talk about in the armed forces or in an agile unit is working in complex adaptive systems, and it is at the functional level that the real deal happens. So with that as an intent, ladies and gentlemen, let me just talk to you about this person who I'm flashing on the slide, and that is the fighter pilot who changed the art of war, John Boyd. He's the one who brought in this concept of what the OODA loop is. So let me talk about OODA loop first. So just because I will assume that for some of y'all this would be a new topic. So let me just explain the OODA loop in very simple terms. Now what happened was John Boyd was a fighter pilot in the Korean War and in the Vietnam War, and he was a thinking pilot, a scholar warrior. Okay, so he noticed that in the Korean War you had the the Russian MiG-15 and the F-86 Sabre of the US Army in close combat pitch to pitch battles most of the time. And he realized that although the Americans had a superior aircraft, it always so happened that the MiGs were able to always have, they were always one bound ahead in every combat scenario, ladies and gentlemen. And that is when John Byard brought in this concept. When he observed what was happening, he brought in this concept of the OODA loop. That is the shortening of the decision making cycle that a pilot needs to carry out in order to engage another target in a completely volatile, ambiguous, complex, and uncertain environment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so how John Boyd was able to enunciate this particular model was basically focusing on the, and this is just I hope it's not looking too technical, so I will just explain it to you. These are two aircrafts. Okay, so you have the attacking aircraft and the defender. Okay, and this guy is going to engage the defender. So how does it happen? How does a OODA loop happen? Now, time is of the essence, and therefore the moment you spot the target, you need to see, you need to observe the target. The moment you observe the target, you need to position yourself in such a way that you are always in a position of advantage. Then you need to make a decision whether you want to take an inverted loop or a side loop or a barrel roll, and then come in and position right behind where the pilot is and take an action, that is maneuver the aircraft in such a way that you are right behind the defender and are in a position to get him in your crosshairs and take a shot at him. So ladies and gentlemen, all this is taking place within 40 seconds, and that is why John Byard was also called the 40-second guy. That is, he was able to engage targets, and what his model said was, you are engaging targets in a 40-second window. Okay, so that's what the OODA loop is all about. You are able to observe, position, decide, and take an action all within 40 seconds. Okay, so that is how the OODA loop came into being. And this is, most of us are also, now let me just relate the OODA loop with the other more common loop that we are all aware in an agile space, that is the PCDA. That is, in other words, the plan, do, check, and act, or what is also called the plan, do, study, and act loop, which is a function of continuous improvement being something which is very, very in synchronous with the agile way of being. So if you compare both are actually decision making loops. How to get faster to market, how do you decide faster on a particular decision. But there is one thing which is dominant in the OODA loop. Okay, so just to hear some thoughts, and I hope the chat function is working. Okay, I just would love to hear some thoughts. Okay, and I've taken out the slides. I just want to make it a little interactive. Can someone tell me what is the dominating variable between an OODA loop, that is a combat decision cycle, and the what we saw is the PDCA cycle? Can anyone tell me what is critical in it? Any thoughts? Aarti, I hope people can type in.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
thanks,
That
thanks.
works.
Yeah, so let me hear your thoughts as to what do you think, is the main differentiator between an OODA loop that is able to decide and engage a target in 40 seconds, and engaging and doing, something like a decision-making cycle using the PDCA loop. Okay, Prashant, thank you. Orient is one of the most important parts of the OODA loop, but any other thoughts? What is critical in an OODA loop? Okay, so let me bring it out. Okay, what is, okay, I think I saw another. Okay, OODA is orient before action, PDCA checking after action. Good, Austin, that is a nice way of looking at it. Okay, wonderful. So the dominant factor, okay, another way to look at it is in OODA loop, time is of the essence. Time is the dominant parameter. The pilot who goes through the OODA loop cycle in the shortest time prevails because his opponent is caught responding to situations that have already changed. So the situation is so VUCA, ladies and gentlemen, that you're able to, the aim is to lengthen the opponent's OODA and shorten your own OODA in such a way that by the time he's still orienting and deciding, you already come into the act stage. So for us, time becomes a dominant factor. You are able to shorten the OODA loop or lengthen the OODA loop depending on your mission profile. So this is what the OODA loop sketch looks like. Okay, and like it was rightly brought out, the orient, okay, this is a little complex, so let me make it very easy for those of you who are able to see the screen. The four components of OODA is the observe, orient, decide, and act. But it is more complex than what you are looking at, because OODA changes as per the mission profile, the situation, and the environment. So how does that work? The first thing is observe. Your ability to observe unfolding circumstances, the information which is coming from outside, and then you are able to feed that into an orientation where your cultural traditions, your genetic heritage, new information, previous experience, your ability to analyze and synthesize information all comes into being. So please understand that orientation changes from person to person. And that is why it is not what we do not emphasize too much on the aircraft or on the machine. We emphasize on the person behind the machine, ladies and gentlemen. Why is that? Because when it comes to a person, each person's orientation will be different. And that is why in a combat context, it's very important for teams to work together so that this orientation becomes near synchronous. So they need to become familiar, they need to train together, they need to stay together, they need to become one single operating entity. Because this changes from person to person. So the more you're able to synchronize the orientation between people, the better it will be to get to the decide and act. Otherwise, if this is different, if the orientation is different, say for example, you have 5 people on a mission packet and each person is orienting differently, that is looking at the new information differently, operating from a different previous experience, or having different metrics of analysis and synthesis, then the orientation also will be different for each of these 5 people, and they will decide and act according to that. So there can be a differential in the way the action will come out. And also what you need to notice is the decision is also based on a hypothesis. Okay, and then action is also a test, and the outcome or the consequence gets into a feedback, and then it gets and refines your observation once again. So this is a continuous loop, and that is why we call it an OODA loop. That is how you orient, how you decide, take an action. The action and the decision will have a consequence. That consequence further refines your observation ability, and then you again orient, decide, and act. So this is happening multiple number of times in an iterative way, and each time you're taking an action, your ability to observe and orient is getting further and further calibrated and fine-tuned. Okay, so what is written in this box? I would like to just focus. Note how orientation shapes observation, shapes decision, shapes action, and in turn is shaped by the feedback and other phenomena coming into a sensing or observing window. So if I were to put it into agile terms, ladies and gentlemen, orientation becomes a primary factor in the way we decide and act. That is our culture, our tradition, our upbringing, the way we look at new information, our previous experience, analysis, and our capability of analyzing information and synthesizing that information. So a lot of it is got to do with the human factor. So how you uh, work on this particular orientation is important. So a lot of military leadership is focused on this, because if you are able to orient on this small loop here, there's an inner loop within the larger loop. Okay, this is important for us to get this loop going. Okay, and also note how this entire loop, okay, just not orientation, is an ongoing many-sided implicit cross-referencing process of projection, empathy, correlation, and rejection. Again, human factors, ladies and gentlemen. So when it comes to the military way of looking at things, we don't focus that much of emphasis on the machine as much we focus on the human operating the machine. So for us, the focus is getting the human, okay, training the human being, the human factor in the operation of any military machine, be it a tank, be it a weapon system, be it aircraft, a helicopter, anything. So when we look at operating a machine, we focus more on the human factor, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. The first value of agile fits in beautifully into this concept. So this is how the OODA loop functions. And I want to bring out this very important aspect of the OODA loop as to how the human factor plays an important part in combat decision making in a VUCA environment. At the end of the day, it's not the kind of weapon you use, but how you are able to react and respond with that weapon that uh, is deciding whether you live to see another day or not. So having understood the OODA loop, this is how the OODA is applied in combat. So let me give you two scenarios. Okay, in this scenario, you find that there's a sniper, and if you notice, a sniper's OODA is stretched. He will observe, he will orient, but then he's only got one shot, because the moment he fires that shot, he's compromising his position. So his ability to decide and take action in engaging that target is extended. Okay, snipers are trained to sit idle for extended amounts of time, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes for about 12 hours, 14 hours overnight, they are able to train themselves and condition themselves to sit and only keep observing. Okay, so their OODA loops are highly stretched because the decision and action, they've only got one critical window to take part to engage the target. However, a close combat team, okay, for them the observation is extended, but the moment they acquire the target, okay, the target is equally swift, the target is equally mobile. So therefore their orientation, decision and action is much more quicker. So for them, the moment they look at the target, they are supposed to rapidly identify the target and engage the target. This becomes more critical in hostage situations, especially when you have friend and foe among the targets. Selecting the foe among the friend becomes very critical. So therefore, we train in such scenarios to observe and quickly identify the target, orient, decide and act. Typical hijack scenarios where you got to engage targets inside an aeroplane in a confined area, the OODA cycles are very, very short, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this was just to give you an understanding from a military perspective, because at the end of the day, OODA is all about combat decision making. But then, how do we relate it in the corporate setting from an agile perspective? Okay, so please understand, OODA works best in a holacracy. Now, what is holacracy? Now, holacracy is a system of corporate governance whereby members or a team or business form distinct, autonomous, yet symbiotic teams to accomplish tasks and company goals. Sounds very familiar to the agilists in the room. Okay, that is why in Scrum, when you are, Scrum teams, we are so focused on getting them to be small, autonomous, yet symbiotic in nature. The very fact of getting cross functionality in Scrum teams is to advocate the philosophy of holacracy in teams. And combat teams are inherently holacratic, ladies and gentlemen. That is, we have flexible organization structures with clear roles and accountabilities. We are geared towards action and eliminating over analysis. We are very, very mindful of analysis paralysis. We don't go too much into long enduring meetings. For us, every meeting is a new meeting and we change the format frequently. We have more autonomy to teams and individuals, for individuals to solve issues themselves and cut through bureaucracy, and unique decision making process to continuously evolve the organization structure as to how we can reduce the number of decision making points and reducing the number of decision making loops. So holacracy becomes an important aspect of combat operations, especially when you have units which are small, working in highly volatile environments. Okay, so I'll take a quick stop here. And since this is a webinar, so I have a few limitations, but I can't make it interactive. But if there are any observations, any questions, I will just pause here and I would love to hear some observations or questions. Feel free to type in the chat window, please. Any questions? Okay, if there are none, then let me just, okay, I see one question coming up. Okay, more examples of UDA in corporate culture. Okay, I'll come to it a little later. See, the fact is in UDA, let me give you another example of how UDA works in corporate culture. Say you have, uh, you know, a new product feature that is, your competitor is coming to and is using, and you also now feel that that product feature that your competitor is now introducing in the market can shift the balance towards him. So now you need to understand that, do you react and start developing that product feature into your own product without and compromising value, or do you continue with the value that you are looking into your product and wait for the competitor to deliver that item into the market, and see what his UDA is, how much of it is he deciding and acting, and you can thereafter calibrate your UDA, that is ensuring that how fast are you able to respond to what the customer or your competitor is doing as far as your product is. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're studying your competitor's UDA and trying to calibrate with your own UDA, and ideally, if you talk about competition, you are supposed to stretch your competitor's UDA and reduce your own so that you are able to deliver faster to market. So that is how, I'll not go too much into the nitty gritties because that would be a topic by itself. But UDA just is a function of the mindset. You should be able to factor in time in your decision. The longer you take in deciding, okay, the faster it takes for you to lose your relevance in a market. It talks about Hicks law, and Hicks law says the more choices and more time you put into a project, the more decision loops that you engage yourself into. So analysis paralysis comes in. And how can we strive to ensure time is still a dominant factor in UDA and corporate sector? By I'll come to that. That is exactly what I'm going to cover now. So you need to bring in a culture within your teams. Okay, and that is, UDA is not only about decision making. Okay, sorry about that. UDA is not about decision making alone. It is also to predict and adapt to a dynamic circumstance of reality. Now, this is what UDA is actually. Okay, most of us think that decision making is important. Okay, but more important than decision making is your ability to predict and adapt to dynamic circumstances of reality. That is the way your competitor is operating in the market, the way your product is being accepted by the customer, the various environmental, external and internal factors that are impacting your business. All these will play a part, and while all these are impacting your business and your team, you should have the ability to predict and adapt to that dynamic circumstance of reality. It's reality, it's not a hypothesis. So how do we cater for that? So just to give you an example, UDA in an agile context. Okay, now please understand that, let's take it that you have the product owner operating on a UDA cycle, the scrum master operating on a UDA cycle, and the scrum team also operating on UDA cycle, because ultimately all three are human beings. So let's take a common factor, that there is a new item which is coming and they need to factor it into the sprint plan. So the UDA is, what do I see, hear and feel? That is the observation of the new occurrence. Where am I and what is happening? What should be done and how will it be done? And what is the action I can take? Now, each of these three roles, the product owner, the scrum master, and the scrum team, will have their UDA loop. Now, the magic or the crux is, are you able to get near synchronicity in all the three roles? That is the product owner operating from the same UDA? Is the scrum master also operating with the same UDA? And is the scrum team also, each member operating on the same team? That is, The stretch should become near-synchronous, as synchronous as possible. That is, how the product owner orients himself or herself, how the scrum master orients himself or herself, and how each member in the scrum team also orients himself or herself is critical. They should be together. They should be in neo, what we say is from a position of near synchronicity. They should be able to adjust their OODA loops such that when they're taking the action, all of them are taking action together. Because even if one person is orienting differently to the new event, it will impact the OODA of the entire Scrum team. So let's me refine this a little more. Now, in order for teams to effectively use the OODA loop, they must have mutual trust built on a base of shared values and combined with years of working on different difficult challenges together. So this is a key factor, and that is why we say in Scrum teams, we should not be changing members frequently. Because the moment you change members frequently in a Scrum team, what happens is the biggest impact is on mutual trust, or what we call is psychological safety. It takes a lot of time to build psychological safety, build mutual trust between people on a base of shared values. And if you change and repeatedly keep changing people within the Scrum team, this can get highly impacted. So every time you get someone new, your OODA loop will shift within the team. So that person who comes in can either become a constraint, or the team can become a constraint against the other person, because at the end of the day, it takes time to keep repeatedly orientating people into the new person into the team. So therefore, it is critical that your Scrum teams are preserved and are able and are exposed to difficult challenges together. So there is an inherent motive in getting your teams to work in inherent difficult challenges, because it's not about the challenge, it is about getting the team to be working together as one single unit. That is important. Developing psychological safety and mutual trust is a long-term perspective which any agile team should aspire for. And therefore, how do you do it? Okay, so you have to let teams take ownership even if they're going to make mistakes, because in the long run, the mutual trust is more important than the small mistakes. It is consistent with what we know as fail fast, okay, and fail cheap. Now, fail fast, fail cheap is a corporate philosophy, but in the combat scenario, it plays a very vital role. For us, it is more important that you accept your mistakes, because when teams start accepting mistakes, what is also happening is there is a bonding which takes place, there's mutual trust which takes place, and that is more important than the mistakes that are happening within the team. So we are always able in the initial stages, yes, you accept a margin of error, but as you keep operating together, that margin of error gets mitigated because of the formation of mutual trust. So it's important for teams, okay, small teams especially. So again, I'll go back to it. In the corporate world, it is very important to delegate ownership at the lowest level of function as possible. Okay, so therefore, it is important for us to understand some key combat terminologies which drives small teams in achieving high performance. Okay, and this is best enumerated in the from a academic point of view in the military colleges from the German form of the art of war, and they call it the intuitive skill. So what they say is, okay, that as you get more skilled in a certain domain, you can develop an intuitive skill that lets you move through the OODA loop more rapidly and more effectively as you get inside your adversary's OODA loop. So let's replace the adversary with your delivery, what you're supposed to deliver, what you're committing in a sprint. So the more you focus on developing an intuitive skill, the faster you're able to work through your OODA loop. What we call is muscle memory. So that is something that we like to develop within a team. And the best way to enhance intuitive skill is through realistic training. So you need to understand that in combat environments, realistic training becomes very important, because the more real your training is, the more the muscle memory is getting firmed in, and that is what we call as developing an intuitive skill to react and respond to any situation faster than before. Now the next aspect is, okay, ability to scratch, and that is what we say, you should be able to scratch your own itch by building a product that you yourself actually use. So whatever you are building, whatever you are, your vision is something that you are also associated with. So when you create a vision for your product, okay, is it something you believe in, or is it something that has been forced on you? That is critical. So every member in a team should be able to, associate themselves to the greater vision. So it's important to scratch your own itch, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to building a product that is so good that you would actually use it yourself. So that's what we look at when you talk of intuitive skill. The next is focus. Okay, instead of insisting on a step-by-step plan, identify a focal point and adapt. That means, how do you get to your target is all by identifying the center of gravity, that is the focal point, and adapting yourself to reach there. So instead of giving others a plan, you give them an objective, what we call is a Schwerpunkt. I'll not go into the German terminologies, but we don't focus too much on the plan when we execute a task. We give people objectives, and then we allow the teams to figure out how to get there. So teams become more agile, more flexible, more rapid in getting to the focal point using a series of maneuvers that they've been trained in. So for us, it is all about giving us a mission and an objective. How we go there is is left to the individual teams to plan it out. It does not come under one single large plan, because the moment you do that, you're forcing everyone in their maneuver, and once maneuver gets constrained, it's very difficult to move towards the objective. So it is important for us to understand that when you're doing OODA loops right, accuracy and speed improve together. Okay, they don't trade off. So you need to be accurate by training, and also develop the speed or the velocity or the tempo to improve together. And the trade-off is between the speed of your iterations over getting the perfect outcome. So in combat teams, ladies and gentlemen, we don't bother too much on creating a perfect outcome. Yes, we do believe in fighting another day, but for us, it is more about the speed of our iteration, how fast we are able to deliver, how fast we are able to reach to the target, how fast we are able to engage the target. That matters, not how perfect our outcome should be. Because if you focus on the perfection of your outcome, you're going to lose out on critical time. And in our case, the target may not be where you want it to be. And a primary function of management is to build an organization that gets better and better at responding and adapting using the OODA. Now, the OODA is again, it comes into the forefront because the OODA is individual specific uh, way of deciding and orienting towards a particular action. And it also has a lot of significance on how you are able to iterate your decision making loops. So each time you put yourself into a particular situation, you get some new knowledge. That new knowledge is what you synthesize. It improves your ability and your orientation, and therefore your ability to decide and act gets much more refined. And that is why we say in each iteration, okay, in a scrum team, what you need to focus is not on the success parameters. We try to focus more on the failures. What are the failures? Let's talk about it in the retrospectives. Let's celebrate failure. Let's talk about mistakes, and just not focus on the success of meeting, fulfilling your increment or meeting the sprint goals. That is not what we are looking at. Okay, so as a military thinker, what I look at is in the end of a sprint, when I speak to my teams in a retrospective, I ask them, and I wish to celebrate more and more failures, more and more mistakes, because once people are talking about failures, once they are talking about mistakes, and it is okay to talk about it in within the team, within the the playing field, then what is happening is mutual trust is being built, psychological safety is being built, and that is the bedrock. When you have psychological safety, it's easy to facilitate, it's easy to coach, it's easy to get people to do what they want, and most important, teams are then able to become more intuitive, they are taking initiative, they become more self-organized and self-managed. So while we are pursuing the ideology of becoming self-managed and self-organized, ladies and gentlemen, the bedrock, the foundation is to create mutual trust between the team. And once again, I'll reiterate that very critical aspect, that if you want mutual trust and psychological safety to be created, then allow the teams to make mistakes, allow the teams to make be okay with failure. The organization should have the heart to absorb the mistakes, because these mistakes are an investment towards making teams which are more flexible, more adaptive, and more, what we call is esprit de corps, more loyal towards each other. So this is these are the key points as to why we say that the OODA loop is a mindset, and it is one of the ways in which you can develop your mindset towards being more adaptable and more flexible. And therefore, again, it is left to the person understanding this concept, okay, in associating it with the agile mindset. The agile mindset also talks of the same issues, ladies and gentlemen, the 4 values and the 12 principles of the agile manifesto. So when you look at the 4 values, individuals' interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan, they all conform to the same ideology which you find in the combat situation also. Because when you look at the items on the left, they are all human issues. And in combat, ladies and gentlemen, we only focus on human issues. Okay, it is the man that we focus on and not the machine. The machine is incidental as far as we go. So I see a question here. You mentioned stable team, but it seemed as though we were focusing on static stability of the team where members stay for long periods of time. What about dynamic stability? Okay, so let me give you a dynamic stability concept of dynamic stability within the armed forces too. Okay, now what happens is once you work with a team, now we get we don't forever stay with the same team. We grow within the organization. So as you progressively move, you start operating with other team players. The mission may be the same, the profile changes, your team also can change. Okay, now the moment the team changes, our ability to adapt to the new team, to get into the new team is so quick, because we follow the process, we know what is to be done, and we accept each other as equal. So when it comes to a dynamic environment, in fact, all of us, okay, I as a crew, I have worked with multiple a crews, but it is not the people or the individuals who matter. We look at it as one single unit inside the aircraft. So for us, in the initial stages of training, it is a static stability, like what you say, about 4 years in the unit. And once you spend 4 years in the unit, you get to know develop the intuitive skills, the ability to focus. Then we move out and start operating in dynamic scenarios with dynamic teams, multiple teams. And thereafter, it doesn't matter, because each one of us is equally competent to work with the other person. Okay, so I've worked in mountains, I've worked in jungles, I've worked in deserts, I'm trained for all of them. But the tactics that I learned in the initial stages remains the same. It is only the mission profile which changes, the people which change, and for me to adapt to that new environment, it takes 72 hours for us to adapt to a new environment. That is the time given to us in a working scenario like ours. Okay, I hope I've been able, because I'm not getting some feedback, so and I seem to be only talking one way, but I hope you've been able to get some clarity on what I've been saying. So ladies and gentlemen, OODA is also enabled by technology. Okay, can anyone tell me what is this slide? Who is on this slide? Okay, can I see some thoughts on also? Okay, thank you, Austin. Thank you for reinforcing that and acknowledging that. Appreciate. So, okay, again, I have an issue here because I'm not getting feedback from the participants. Okay, so this is the Mongol empire, and this is Genghis Khan. Okay, this guy was one of the greatest military warriors the world has ever known. Okay, virtually unstoppable, unbeatable. Okay, so what happens is, ladies and gentlemen, that he became unstoppable. Can anyone tell me what was that one aspect of technology that Genghis Khan brought in that enabled him to become such a formidable warrior? Anyone? Okay, so let me explain it to you because, okay, of the limitation I'm having. So this is the little stirrup, if you notice. So before the Mongols came in, people used to ride horses and engage targets. And those of you who have ridden a horse, you can imagine how unstable that platform is. When you sit on a horse, it's very, very unstable. So till Genghis Khan came into the battle front, okay, all armies till then, they used to ride stirrupless horses. So there was a lot of, you know, uh, instability in shooting an arrow. The platform itself was so stable that the accuracy of a marksman was very, very large. That is, the error of probability of engaging a target was very, very big. But what did Genghis Khan do? He adopted a simple technology. He brought in the humble stirrup. The moment he put the stirrup on the saddle, his feet became anchored. He was able to raise his seat off the horse and got greater stability while maintaining the maneuver. And therefore, he was effectively able to engage more targets within a given time. So, this is how a simple application of technology was able to give multiple, okay, manifesting into, exponential results, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'm trying to say is, we are all today enabled by technology. Okay, even this talk is courtesy technology. So we should always be adopting the latest form of technology in order to augment our decision cycle loops, ladies and gentlemen, because the human mind is limited because of our inability to be totally emotionless. We are emotional creatures. So, just to give an example, you may think of the ideal car to buy. I'm just giving an example. You can think of the ideal car to buy, and you do your research. You do the comparisons, and you home on that you are going to buy this car. Okay, and then you take your wife along or your spouse along to buy the car, and your children along, and then at that moment your children and your wife are not happy with that car. So immediately all your planning, okay, goes out of the window, because they are also equal decision makers as far as your decision is concerned. So therefore emotions come into play. So constantly, when it comes to human emotions, okay, it is a large factor in deciding our way, the way we orient, decide, and act. So using technology, okay, using the latest forms of technology does enable us to improve and increase our OODA loop. Okay, so just to give you an example, let's not only focus on developing ourselves intuitively, that is from an empirical perspective. We should also be open to see what is happening around us and unlearning and learning. And that is what becomes more important, our ability to shed an old thought and take a new thought in. That is the way we'll be adaptive and flexible when we are using the OODA loop. Okay. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so this is where I will, I have 15 minutes left. So okay, I tried to bring in this concept because this is a fascinating concept, and I see a lot of similarity between how the OODA works for a soldier or a combat soldier in a combat environment, and how a Scrum team works in a near competitive market environment. So I see a lot of commonalities. That is what is my passion. I've been able to work with Scrum teams, enabling them to develop the OODA way of thinking. And that is why I just thought that I will bring it just to fire your curiosity, ladies and gentlemen. 1 hour is too short a time. Uh, this is a concept. The aim is to build curiosity in all of y'all, to make y'all look at other horizons than the one which limits us. Okay, so today my aim was to put all of y'all on a pedestal and look beyond your visible horizon, and look at the fact that yes, there are more things than what we know from our understanding of Scrum, from our understanding of the Agile Manifesto. There's so much more that is in sync and that is applicable in the way we do Agile, and the way we are understanding the way we are Agile and the way we do Agile. Okay, so with that, okay, may the OODA be with you. Okay, so okay, now let me just see some thoughts. Never thought about it that way before this session. Many thanks for bridging and linking them together. Thank you, Zilin. No, okay. Okay, I see a lot of acknowledgements. Thank you. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any questions about agile mindset? How do you develop a mindset of being adaptive, being flexible, being responsive? Okay, yes, good, Rakshit. I would love you to read more about the OODA. There is a lot about the OODA. I didn't just want to complicate it by, because there is a tendency for us to overanalyze a new concept. I just kept it at a very, very basic fundamental level. But if you are able to at least talk and research about OODA and talk about it in your teams tomorrow, I think that itself will fulfill the objective of this 1 hour that we've spent together. I still have 12 minutes with me. I had catered for 15 minutes of question and answers. Are there any questions or answers? Anything at all? Okay, so Prashant, interesting topic. We'll read more on OODA. Yes, please do. Okay, and for those of you who are in a learning journey, do look at the differences between PDCA, PDSA, and OODA. Okay, because we are more familiar with the plan, do, check, and act concept, but the OODA adds a better flavor to it. Okay, so I see another question coming up. Okay, just curious, there is a lot mentioned such as OODA, PDCA, BML, but fundamentally can be said that they are similar concepts about continuous. Yes, absolutely. It's all about continuously retrospecting and unlearning, if I can use the word. Okay, this is my personal experience. Okay, both in combat and with agile teams. We are very fond of learning, but we are very shy of unlearning. Okay, learning we do in public, unlearning we want to do in private. I think it should be the other way around. We should unlearn. Okay, and that is what is important for us to be able to unlearn a topic. That takes a lot of courage and ability to say that yes, I don't know. Okay, I would like to know more. It is all about, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are standing today, just stand on a pedestal and look beyond, and you will see there is so much beyond your visible horizon. And that is exactly what I guess anonymous attendee is asking me. Okay, all these concepts are only concepts unless you don't put them and experience them. It can be anything, you can call it any name, but my only humble request is, in your professional journey, please stand on a pedestal and you'll be able to look beyond the horizon and then go and explore that horizon. What else is there? Have a look at it and use the agile way of inspecting and adapting. Check it out. If OODA works, makes sense, your team is willing to adopt it, try it. If not, leave it. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you only get a little wiser. So let me ask what Prashant is asking. What is the one most important thing that you observed as different while interacting with corporates and coaching them? Okay. Uh, okay. Prashant, the biggest, what I would say the challenge that I face is our inability to say no. Okay. When we know that the value has been clearly defined, when we know that we have a commitment in the sprint, still most of us are not able to say no. The cultural trappings, the social trappings in our inability to say no to a particular, what would I say, a particular instruction or a new requirement I find very, very challenging for people to see beyond it. They don't see value. Okay. So it is important that, you know, we are able to, and this, Prashant, for me is still an ongoing challenge. How do I get people to say no? And making people understand that they are gatekeepers in an agile team. You are gatekeepers. You are the ones who allow what adds value, and you should be the ones who should allow what doesn't add value into your teams, instead of allowing people to gate crash and move in. I find that as a cultural and social limitation. Okay, so let me hear what Jiva says. Power presentation. Okay, happy to be here, thank you. Okay, not that seriousness felt either by SM itself, the management. While business money is hostile, fun or agile games appear fair for Western world, but not in our culture context. You're right. How do you genuinely strike a balance? Kindly advise. Jiva, all I can say is have a burning passion. Your passion should be red hot. Okay, uh, your passion to do new stuff, your passion to learn, your passion to propagate what you learn, it should be white hot, not even red hot. Okay. And Jiva, if I had more time, I would have also told you that money is a byproduct. If you consistently deliver value and you understand what is value, and that value is actually just not in words but in action. And when I say value, that means it is something that is benefiting another person. Okay, money is a byproduct, it comes by itself. I'm talking from my own example. I refrain from too much of sermonizing. People who know me well, that I believe in taking action and taking a risk in taking that action. Because when I take that action, my intention is very clear, my passion is very clear. Because if that action does not generate the consequences that I expected, then it's okay. I failed. I quickly adapt and move and attempt again. But each time I attempt, it comes with new unlearning, and therefore I'm able to consistently look at what value I'm delivering. And Jiva, if you, as a Scrum Master, product owner, whatever your role may be, if you are focused at delivering value, if you are focused on not, uh, you know, seeking updates but seeking commitments from your team, and when you're seeking commitments both from yourself and your team as a Scrum Master, your passion is white hot. Okay, nothing else matters. Everything else is a byproduct. It's a topic for another day, but I just want to bring it out because you asked me to strike a balance. That's where the balance comes in. I hope I've been able to give you a convincing response, Jiva, because the question itself is quite loaded. Okay, any other questions? Any other thoughts, please? Okay, did I miss out on any? Rakshit, okay, good. Good to see the note that I'll be seeing you. Okay. Is there any other topic or Prashant? I hope I was able to give you. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I got the acknowledgement. Okay. Any any other question? Okay. So I have 6 minutes left. So Aarti, would you like to say something?
I think we're good, Ranjiv. And with respect to the development path that you spoke of and the details we've sent, like we said, that we'll be sharing the slides in the next 24 to 48 hours, and all the details are there. So if anyone's interested, just feel free to write to us or give us a call, and we're happy to speak to them. Yeah.
And lastly, I will just close this session by telling something which is very close to my heart, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm speaking. Allow me to speak from my personal perception. This is purely my perception. Okay. If you are an agile practitioner, please live the values and principles. Okay. You need to know the values and principles by heart in action and in your retrospectives, irrespective of what you'll discuss. Okay, always ask your teams, are we living the values and following the principles? That is important. At least once in a quarter, ladies and gentlemen, in your retrospective, add another 30 minutes and please have a discussion as to map how much of the values and principles is your team following and living. This is a personal, reflection that I wish to give you, because this is something that I see is missing in various teams who are following Scrum or using the Agile methodology. Okay, this is something that I find that is it over a period of time we focus so much on the framework, on the way, on the methodology, that we forget that the methodology is dependent on the mindset, and the mindset is crafted by the 4 values and 12 principles. And every now and then, regularly, we must bring this up in the retrospective and ask the team, guys, which of the 4 values was missing in our sprint? Or which of the 12 principles are we deviating from in our sprint? And which of the 4 values should we focus more on in the next sprint? And which of the 12 principles should we bring back into our grid in the next sprint? That is something we should bring in into our retrospectives. I just wanted to share this because I see that we have a lot of Scrum Masters and Agilists in the room, and this is something that is close to my heart, and I focus only on this. Everything else falls into place, ladies and gentlemen, if we get our values and principles right in each sprint. With that, with 3 minutes to go, I will just request for one last round of questions. If there are none, I'll wait for a minute and then I will close the session. I'm privileged to have had this opportunity to address all of y'all. And like I said, I'm not getting too much of audio feedback and I can't see y'all, but at the same time, that's the limitation of a webinar. But I get to see a lot of acknowledgements. Thank you. Okay. Rakshit, the personal reflection was valuable. Thank you for acknowledging that. So OODA is a new way of working versus PDCA. You may be following PDCA, but OODA is another flavor. Look at it differently. Okay. So maybe when I meet you in person, we can have a conversation on this. Okay. It is not one against the other. Okay. Now let me, you provoked me into another conversation. Okay. It is never about waterfall versus agile. Waterfall has its own benefits. Agile has its own benefits. Okay. Please, as agilists, we should not look at gauging and judging one aspect over another. That is not being agilist. That is not having the agile mindset. What you should know is, how can I get the best out of this? And how can I also get the best out of that? And therefore, create something best for my team. Inspect and adapt. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's okay. I'll leave it and think of something new. So take the best out of PDCA, take the best out of OODA, see what works and apply it. And once you apply it, you will know whether it works or it doesn't work. The agile mindset in play. So that's something, Rakshit. Okay, with that, I guess I will now thank you all formally for your attention and your participation. Thank you for sparing 1 hour of your time with me. I really appreciate that. And with that, I now formally close the webinar.